we are.
About 7 or 8 years ago, we started playing with these wearables. So, Fitbits and things like that you've heard about. People were primarily using those as fitness trackers at the time. They wear them for 3 months, discover their patterns, throw them in a drawer. But what we realized, well, these are pretty darn powerful physiological monitors. So I started wearing them. And in fact, we tested out large numbers of these things, probably about 50. I ultimately settled on 8. I'm wearing 4 smartwatches right now. I normally wear a ring. I wear all kinds of devices. I typically use about 8 of these every day. And so we actually, we do tons of measurements. And so the big surprise was that because I measure myself so much, I discovered my Lyme disease from a simple smartwatch and a device that actually measures your blood oxygen. It's called a pulse ox. And I discovered it as the backstory was I was helping my brother put up fences in rural Massachusetts. And then 2 weeks later, I was flying to Norway, and I measure myself all the time, as you probably figured out. And on a flight from Frankfurt to Oslo in Norway, I noticed my blood oxygen was abnormally low and my heart rate was way higher than normal. And when I landed, it didn't come back to normal. So I knew something wasn't quite right. I wasn't symptomatic at that point. And then later I got a low-grade fever, and I went to a doctor in Norway who drew blood and saw that, in fact, my immune system was activated, which is characteristic of a bacterial infection. And he recommended penicillin. And I said, no, I need doxycycline, which is what you use for Lyme. And it was a little tense for a few moments because doctors don't like their patients to tell them what to order. But he did give in, gave it to me, and I took it. It cleared it right up. And when I got back from Norway, I got tested. I was Lyme positive. There's a serological test used. And it's well controlled because before I left, I was actually negative. So I did what's called seroconverted during that time.
What's that?
It means like same with COVID going on right now, when you get infected, you'll make antibodies to it. So initially you're negative. And then after you get infected with a pathogen, whether it's a virus, in this case, Lyme, you make antibodies to it and you'll show up as a positive signal then on a test. And that's what happened for me. So bottom line is I was confirmed Lyme positive. But what triggered the whole thing was that my smartwatch was a key factor in all this, that I could tell when I was getting sick before symptoms just from a smartwatch. So what we did then, I had 2 years of data. So we looked at all this data, and it turns out there were 4 times when my heart rate, it turns out my skin temperature you can measure. You measure all kinds of things with these smartwatches. They're very powerful devices. And we discovered that both my heart rate, and it's called my resting heart rate, and my skin temperature were both elevated every single time I got sick, including the Lyme time. And there were 4 times of that. And what was very cool was that one was Lyme, and 2 other times were a viral infection, which is normally what happens when you get a cold. You get a viral infection. The 4th time, I was asymptomatic. I only discovered it because I measure myself so much. And so what was cool was that every single time I was ill, my heart rate jumped up and my skin temperature jumped up, and we could pick it up with a smartwatch. And it also occurred in every case before symptoms appeared.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's pretty powerful. Now, what we haven't gotten to yet is that we've been following 109 people, same as me, very, very deep profiling. And they're all wearing smartwatches too. So we went and looked at their data, and 3 of them had gotten sick as well during the time they were wearing their watches. And 1 got sick twice. And same thing, every single time they got ill, their heart rate jumped up again in advance of symptoms. And for some, the skin temperature worked. For some others, it didn't work. We think, technical reasons why that didn't. So, the big result there then is that we can tell when you're getting ill before your symptoms appear with a simple smartwatch.
Amazing. So we are right now in the midst of a global pandemic with a novel virus, which it's evolutionary niche, its superpower is that it's asymptomatic for so long. It's not the most, thankfully, not the most severe virus humans have ever encountered on Earth, but it's one of the sneakiest ones you could possibly imagine. And it's just because, and then, I mean, all of the psychological things that goes into people not you used to being able to like, well, if someone coughs and starts hacking up a lung, you distance yourself from them, but you don't have those same cues that you normally would, and you don't even have those same cues within yourself. But potentially some of these measurements, you might be changing heart rate, you might be changing, and this wouldn't be, I'm guessing you're not saying like a watch is going to tell you, hey, for 100% you have COVID, but you might be getting a little warning sign like, hey, maybe it's a good time to isolate yourself and go and take a test.
So as you might imagine, when COVID hit, we've really started improving, our algorithms. So we built this infrastructure to be able to pull in people's data in real time and follow what's going on. And so what we did initially was we started tuning our algorithms to see if we could, maximize detection of COVID when it happens, just from a smartwatch. We start with Fitbit. And in 81% of the cases, we had 32 people initially, in basically 26 of those cases, we could tell the effect of a COVID infection. We saw their heart rate jump up. And then, and it turns out it's about 7 beats a minute, some lower, some more. And so we can pick that up from a simple smartwatch, from Fitbit. So we then built an alarming system, and we've tested it out now. And it measures you in real time. So this comes back to something I said earlier. So we follow people in real time. We figure out what their baseline is, what their heart rate bouncing around is, and we measure them hour by hour. And if we see an abnormal jump, now 1 hour won't trigger it. It'll take something like 4 to 6 for what we call a first internal alarm. We call it a yellow alert. And if it stays up, it converts to a red alert. And if it goes back, it can go back to green. So the point is that we're following you hour by hour for your normal baseline. And if if your heart rate jumps up for several hours in a row abnormally, we can tell that. Okay. And now that can be anything. It could be a viral infection. It's not specific for COVID either. It could be the flu. There's other common colds out there. They're called rhinovirus. It could be any of those things. But we can tell that. Okay. And the other thing is, it turns out we can tell it 4 days on average before symptoms appear. And as you were saying, COVID's super sneaky. So it hits you and you have this long it's called pre-asymptomatic period before your symptoms appear. And so we can actually tell your heart rate, turns out, jumps up way before your symptoms appear for most people. And some people, it's as much as 10 days. In fact, the very first case we had, it's what told us this is really going to work. We had a case come in, the very first one, they told us their diagnosis date and their symptom date, and we looked at when their heart rate jumped up. It was a very clear signal, 9.5 days before symptoms. So They were running around spreading the virus for 9.5 days, not knowing, because they don't know. And that's true of all these folks. So again, the median's the average is more like 4 days before symptoms appear. So we think this is very, very powerful. And now we have the algorithms working for other watches as well. So we've just launched a major study. We hope everyone listening will come join our study. If you have a smartwatch, all you have to do is sign up.
Get in on it. Get in on science, guys.